News broke today that a small number of U.S. Special Forces are already on their way to Syria to continue with the U.S. and international effort against ISIS there. Now, we've got a lot of information about what their strategy is going to be once they get there, but this is already a contentious issue inside of the White House. Reporters asking the press secretary what their mission is going to be. Is this a prelude to more troops going in? Does this mark a significant change in U.S. military strategy in Syria? And we're going to see a little bit of that in this video clip.
This president, this White House, the officials here at this White House repeatedly, over and over again, made it clear to the American people that there would be no combat role for U.S. troops fighting ISIS. That appears to be changing. Not only is there this announcement that you're talking about today, which you say they won't be involved in a combat role, but you're not ruling out the possibility that they may be involved in some sort of combat operation. But on the Iraq side, you have Pentagon officials this week saying we're in combat. So it would be great if we could just have a moment of clarity here and you can acknowledge that yes, this mission is changing. It is not what it was said it was going to be at the onset of this. Yeah. I mean, I just think it's clear.
To say that, Jim, would only confuse the situation. The fact of the matter is the mission that the Commander-in-Chief has given our military personnel in Iraq and now in Syria is a train, advise, and assist mission. And we have gone to great lengths to make clear that is in no way diminishes the amount of risk that our men and women in uniform will be facing. We've also been quite clear that there actually have been situations where combat boots have been on the ground inside of Syria.
So there, as we were just saying during the video, there he was talking about Vietnam or Iraq or God knows how many places, because that's always what we're there to do. We send something like 100,000 military advisors with rifles into the country to advise them on how to point their rifles at people and pull the trigger. Yeah. But anyway, again, it's only something like 20 to 30 special forces at this point. And there was a lot more to that press conference, obviously. Josh Earnest saying that there had already been special forces missions inside of Syria. So this doesn't mark the sort of drastic sea change in U.S. military policy in Syria that some people might think that it does. But I'm glad that the media is at least bringing up that there were promises given, right, in regards to our role.
Right, and it does demonstrate the failure of the policy that they've been pursuing currently. When it was widely reported, you remember a couple of weeks ago, they spent $500 million on training rebels. Yeah. And they then finally had to admit that they trained 5 rebels, a maximum of 5 rebels. So that's $1 million a pop. So that demonstrates the failure of that. It does stick in the throat a little bit when you take into account his comments that the administration made in 2013, though, John, surely, when he says, I will not put American boots on the ground in Syria. That's pretty categorical. Yeah. And also, I do not want an open-ended action like Iraq and Afghanistan. This seems to be what people are getting upset about, I think, is this is the thin end of the wedge, because obviously this is a way in, and you're right. There's that word assist in there, which is open-ended, deliberately vague. Yeah. What does that really mean? There's that policy now, the 3 Rs that they're going to be pursuing, raid, rucker, and I can't remember the third one, those 3 Rs.
Rabble-rousing.
It wasn't rabble-rousing, but it's really an admission that the policy has failed. There's those talks, the multi-party talks that are going on currently as well, which Iran is sitting down to, which Syria is sitting down to, where there's those separate diplomatic talks that are going on. And I think...
we have the complication of Russia at the same time, too.
And I was just about to say, dare I say it, I think Putin, in lots of ways, as we discussed on the show a couple of weeks ago, Putin has forced the hand. Because Putin has demonstrated that they are viable in the region. They have given legitimization to Assad by receiving him in Moscow, by indicating that any kind of transitional government must have Assad as part of it, at least for a few months. The other Western powers, the other Western coalition countries, such as Germany, such as France, have indicated that they will have to go along with that because in terms of a solution, Assad is the only viable player. And that obviously goes against the US stated position. So I'd like to come with some good news and say, well, this seems like a positive. My gut feel is this is just they're kind of throwing things at a wall and going, well, we've got to do something. Drones and bombing raids are not doing it.
Well, and I think they're making the violence worse. I think that they're escalating the unrest within the country. I was really interested. Did you guys see the recent Frontline Special about Assad, Syria? It was interesting because the angle that was taken was from Syrian nationals who are still siding with their core government, or rebels who left and joined the rebel forces and then and
became disillusioned.
Yeah, they were defected, and then they actually went back to the Syrian National Army. And it was really interesting just to kind of take that different perspective, not to say that I have any, formulated opinion about either one of those things, but to see it from the eyes of the people that are living inside of that war right now, and to see why they think the things that they think and how much anti-American sentiment you often see, because of course that's going to happen every new bomb you drop, every new drone you send in.
Yeah, and it does seem like, when the initial rebellion started, it was a mess, but it was so much simpler than it is now, where you have multiple rebel factions. You have ISIS now, you have ISIS offshoots, Al-Qaeda offshoots, you have the US and their international partners, you have Russia, you have the Kurds. It's such a complicated situation now that I can imagine that a lot of people who thought, okay, we're going to do this thing, like was happening in a lot of parts of that part of the world. There had been revolutions of that sort, and maybe they thought this won't be that difficult or take that long. But then they see the hell that develops across their country. It leads to a refugee crisis that we're still dealing with today, increasingly so. And then maybe that's why some of them feel like, well, as bad as it was better than it is today.
And some of those refugees are now leaving the camps in Lebanon and going home because their plight is so bad and they have no future. They would rather die, and they see it as a death sentence. They would rather die at home than in some, Lebanese refugee camp where they have no prospects, no food, no nothing. So there's that complete breakdown of any kind of infrastructure, any kind of help for these people.
Yeah.
So it's the biggest mess that we've faced. Even since 1945, sorry.
No problem. I still don't know, you made the point that the drones aren't doing it, and, what does doing it mean? Like, I don't even know what the mission is, right? So are we really are we going to try to get Assad out, and then who do we want to put in after Assad? And then...
it seemed like that was the mission before Russia's direct involvement. That certainly complicates any plan to remove the current government.
Right.
I don't know how we would pursue that
We saw that in Egypt. We've seen it across the board, removing somebody and then putting somebody in place before the people that live there are ready for those kinds of changes.
So what...
But you're right. I don't know what the mission is now.
I know there's a comedian named Jack Cohen, and I just saw him the other night, and he made a great point. He was talking about how you have the Kurds there, you have ISIS, you have Al-Qaeda, you have the rebels, the Free Army, you have Assad, you have the United States, and you have Russia.
Yeah.
So his idea, Jack Cohen's, was why don't we let them all fight it out, and then we'll take on the winner. It's just like the Little League World Series. We're automatically in the final round, right?
We always are.
We can go over there anytime we want.
So exactly what we're trying to do here is, I think this is a good thing, though, because I think a few more bombs are going to fix everything over there. We've been only bombing there for 14 years straight, and I think maybe another 14 years ought to do it.
Maybe 40.
So the fact that, and then they're also committing $30 billion to this, right? So in this new budget that they signed, or that they're putting together, this 2-year plan, $30 billion on top of what we're already spending on the Pentagon. Another $30 billion goes for just bombing in the Middle East for next year. Just for that, $30 billion. You know what Bernie Sanders' plan is to give everybody college for free? $60 billion, okay? So half of what everybody's going to spend on college next year, we're going to spend on bombs over in the Middle East. Okay.
Yeah, but now the kids who can't afford to go to college can go into the military, drop some of those bombs.
The other report that's come out is the indication that the Saudis, obviously our, quote, ally in the region, and the Americans have been supplying YPG, which is with this Kurdish militia, which is supposedly the Kurdish militia, who are the friendly bunch of Kurdish militia, who have been fighting ISIS and fighting ISIS effectively, are actually affiliated now, apparently, to the PKK. And the PKK are a known, noted terrorist organization that are universally recognized. So the lines are so blurred.
They are.
And that the irony is that we're actually, as much as we're trying to fight ISIS, and as I said, arming supposedly friendly rebels, it's impossible to tell the who from the what.
And many Syrians see Saudi as their biggest threat. They see Saudi as the biggest complication in the region, and we are allies with Saudi, which of course I have a huge problem with. I'm assuming a lot of people on this panel have a huge problem with.
Record, of course.
Exactly, and so that further complicates things. So it's
well, and also, and we reported this I think a week or two ago. We have this idea of the U.S. being part of a large international coalition in Syria, but when you actually break down the monetary contribution of these other countries is quite small. And when you talk about the actual action taking place every day in Syria, which is predominantly airstrikes, In the past month or so, we've been conducting anywhere between 90 to 98% of all the airstrikes, just the U.S.
Jesus.
So there is a coalition, but it's a coalition that is largely not involved in what's actually going on.
Yeah.
A coalition of one, exactly. I just want to bring up this comparison between territorial distributions of some of the players in the region. So what you're seeing there is about midway up and midway over, you see Al-Raqqa. It's inside of the black on the left and then still in the black on the right. You're seeing black is, those are the worst. I was going to say the bad guys. Those are the worst guys. That's ISIS there. Well, depends on who you consider the worst. And so that Al-Raqqa, that is largely what we believe that the special forces are going over there is in relation to that city, which is widely considered to be ISIS's geographical capital. And for the past few months, Kurdish forces and our airstrikes have led to that city being unsupplied. All the supply lines have been cut off. And the idea is that over the course of the next few months, we're going to continue that campaign now with the special forces advisors on the ground. And if they can knock ISIS out of Raqqa, or possibly just severely harm their ability to operate day to day, the idea is that that would destroy the narrative that ISIS is not just a terrorist organization. They can actually control and manage and provide government for a territory. That is their best example of their ability to do that, and that is why it is believed that that is going to be the target of these new forces going in.
Where is the anti-war voice? Where's the anti-war voice in the Senate, in the Congress, anywhere in public? Where is it on TV? Where are the people saying?
Bernie Sanders largely has been against.
I also think that's what the voice has been up to this point. No, that it has been restraint. No, you don't think so?
No. I mean, we're
we
back
consider
in now.
this
We
restraint.
just ramped up
Exactly.
Afghanistan again. We just ramped that back up after they took over Kunduz, right? So now we're back in. We're guaranteed through 2017.
But I mean, you were just mentioning, you know, the talks about the sarin gas, about the
Right.
chemical weapons, and there was at least some measured constraint there on the part of the American forces.
Well, you know what? That was the people, I think,
Yeah.
and that was, you know, Barack Obama still wanted to go, right? That's why he said, "Well, I'm going to bring it to the Congress," and Congress said no. Isn't that weird? So. But here we are back in now again, and of course we have extra money for bombing there next year, $30 billion now. So I just don't understand, why isn't that a bigger deal? So it's because Barack Obama's doing it, and the fact that Barack Obama's doing it, it splits the opposition. It splits the opposition on the police state that we live under, the surveillance state, right? So that the natural contingency of people that would come together to push back against this, because it's being done by Barack Obama, it splits the opposition, and that's why there isn't one right now. There should be a loud voice. There should be a voice just as loud as we went into Iraq as there is going back in there now. We got to get the hell out of there. We've been in there almost 2 decades. We're going to be in there forever. John McCain brags that why won't we have a permanent base in the middle? Why won't we stay in Afghanistan? Why won't we stay in Iraq? He says we're still in Japan. We're still in Korea. So these people want this. They want to keep it. And we need a big concerted voice to push back against this, because this ain't stopping. This is Orwell. This is perpetual war for perpetual peace.